Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Monday Bible, the podcast where we explore the intersection of artificial intelligence, law, and technology. I'm your host, Michał Jackowski, and today we have an exciting episode focused on challenges of safe data extraction, reliable data extraction, misinformation, and AI safety. Joining me is Professor Iryna Gurevych, a leading researcher in natural language processing, machine learning, and AI ethics. She's a professor of computer science at the Technical University of Darmstadt and leads the UKP Lab, where her team is pioneering advances in AI-driven text processing, information extraction, and responsible AI applications. Iryna, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good morning. Hi.
So let's start with safe and, in fact, reliable data extraction. What are the biggest challenges in reliable data extraction from text and images?
I think in the context of expert applications, the biggest challenge is that a lot of data is complex and it does not have a single interpretation, but it's dependent on the context. And it's hard to know what interpretation is correct in a given context. So it's a very difficult expert task. Another problem is the data quality, since the data may be very noisy. For example, if you take data from the internet, it might not be very credible. So you need something on top in order to assess the credibility of the data source. And all of these issues together have a significant risk that the results of automatic data extraction may not be reliable and may also be misinterpreted due to the lack of context, for example. So when we extract the semantics from text and image, we basically take it out of context. And therefore, we also change the intended interpretation. And especially in the context of legal documents and reports, this may have very severe consequences. And because of this, I think it's important to establish the source of the data, so the human user can have an accountable process and can always, given a particular extraction result, can go back to the source and can verify the origin of the data manually if it is needed. Finally, of course, data protection and sensitive data are extremely important topics nowadays, and we need to design data extraction processes that are sensitive to these legal requirements, and that requires research in its own right.
These are the topics that we discuss a lot in legal world. So if AI misinterprets legal clauses, the consequences can be really severe. We discuss also bias in AI that may cause major issues. Are these real issues from technical point of view also in the world of trustworthy data extraction?
So these are important new research directions. I mean, when we talk about bias, humans are also very biased, right? So humans have these unconscious biases. And for example, in hiring, we even have to take specific training how we can control this unconscious bias. But the biases still exist in our real world. And it's no wonder that AI models inherit biases from the training data, which is reflective of the real world, right? Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, it's even hard to define what is actually a bias, because there's no such thing like a standard, and you can say, okay, if you go like that much in that direction, you are biased, because nobody knows what is actually the ground truth, right? And depending on the culture of the society, different things may be considered standard and non-biased, right? So something which is non-biased in Europe may be extremely biased in China, and vice versa, right? So there is a lot of inherent subjectivity. But what is clear is that AI algorithms can reinforce existing undesirable biases and can reinforced stereotypes that are already present in the training data and can fuel societal effects and divisions, for example, that are generally considered not to be very positive for their society. And the more so that often AI algorithms are not very transparent for the user. In the context of law applications, we have an expert user. And I think an important requirement is that the user has transparency, what is going on, and the use of AI is controllable, right?
Yeah.
So the user has insight into the process and can also steer the process in a certain direction. So AI and human should be on equal footing. That means AI can, make mistakes and the human corrects, and vice versa. AI can give corrective help to the human because humans are not perfect, right? So, I mean, maybe it sounds very trivial, but very often it is assumed a human is perfect. However, a human is not perfect at all. And the same is true for AI, and the hope is that they can influence each other in a good way.
I fully agree. Maybe we will have two different layers of biases, so like human and machine and intersecting somehow. But I fully agree that we live in a very subjective world, and how in this subjective world can we effectively detect and combat misinformation generated by AI? Because this is hot topic discussed right now while changing rules on AI or implementing AI Act in different countries, combating misinformation.
Yeah, so I think combating misinformation, I'm talking to lawyers in this podcast, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes, but maybe some data scientists will also watch us. I hope so. So let's go also in technical matters.
yes, of course. But I mean, the first technical matter, which is also a non-technical matter, is to define what is actually misinformation.
That's true.
Okay, so I mean, it assumes that there is some truth, but in many things there is no objective truth because, things are just unknown, right? And misinformation is a relative term. Basically, it implies that there is something which is considered to be correct, which is in many cases not true. So we can have some evidence supporting a fact, and we have some evidence opposing the fact, but we don't actually know what the truth is, right? So because of this, misinformation is a really, really hard problem, right? Since it is even difficult to define it. And I think, techniques that can just classify something as true or false are not very helpful because the main thing which is important for the audience is to understand why. Okay, so to understand the context, why a certain claim has been made and why the algorithm thinks it is true and reestablish the context. Now, you ask about misinformation generated by AI. So this is not human-generated misinformation, but AI-generated misinformation. There are two different aspects, I guess. So one aspect is this misinformation is generated unintentionally because AI is basically like a statistical algorithm that would generate some sequences, and by chance there might be facts which do not exist in the real world, right? And this is AI-generated misinformation, but there is no purpose in this. So this is just inherent to the process, and there are a lot of techniques how we can prevent this from happening. However, we need to be careful because we also want generative AI for creative applications, right? And creative applications are by definition facts that did not exist before. Otherwise, they cannot be creative. So there's a lot of kind of, uncertainty around this. What is positive misinformation, aka creativity, and what is negative, aka misleading. Okay, so this is one aspect. Another aspect is that, of course, AI can be utilized by malicious parties to become a farm of misinformation generation. So, for example, AI can be vulnerable to malicious prompts asking to generate some misleading visualizations. A misleading visualization is like a chart, for example, where the chart has been manipulated. For example, the scale has been manipulated such that the person gets an impression to believe a fact which is not true. So the person is misled by this visualization, and AI can be easily kind of manipulated to generate a large amount of such charts, right, that can be utilized by malicious parties to influence public opinion. And in order to prevent this from happening, we need original research in AI safety that would provide some safeguards against such so-called jailbreak attacks. So if such a prompt is issued to the large language model, the model will recognize this is a malicious prompt and will refuse to respond.
But how should we do it? Because we have content moderation already, but it has been AI moderation systems have been criticized for being biased, what we discussed, but also for implementing censorship, for disproportionate silencing certain viewpoints. You also mentioned very important things, that there is a big difference between opinions and facts, fact checking and factual state, and misinformation may relate both to opinions and facts. But how we should do it technically, watermarking of AI generated content, some other techniques to be used. I often participate in legal discussions where we say we should prohibit something, but then how to enforce it in the world of AI when somebody for purpose breaches some prohibitions, some bans.
Really good point. According to my knowledge, there is no technical solution to this point at the current time, because the problem is just not well defined, in my opinion. Just let's take maybe an example of text, right? So we leave out more complex things like images, videos, and so on. Just text. Okay, so we basically can have text post-edited by a human. So that will change the original text properties. On the other hand, we also have human written text that may be post-edited by AI. And this can happen in big portions or small portions, that is coarse-grained or fine-grained. I think it's extremely hard to trace the origin of such texts. And also, I'm an academic professor, right? So when I get some written reports by students, they expected to indicate if they have used large language models and what they do. And sometimes they do not indicate the use of the large language model, but I can clearly recognize, I say this text has a smell of being metallic. Okay, so it's not written by human, because I over many years, I have a particular classifier in my mind. I can immediately recognize that the text is not written by a student, but I cannot really prove it. Okay, so there are no legal means how I can prove it. So if the student says, no, I have produced this text myself, so what do I do? So I think there are two things I'm doing, or how I'm taking action. So the first thing is, so far the text written by AI does not have the quality of the text written by a human. So very often this text would be quite generic and lacks specific arguments, and the quality of the text is generally lower. So that student will get a lower grade just because the quality of the report is not good. Another action I take is that, I can have a conversation with a student, like an oral supplementary exam, and ask questions, okay, about the text. And if the text is not produced by a human, it will be evident very quickly based on my questions and answers of the student, right? So what I mean is that probably we need, given this reality and given we cannot really prove legally that the content is human-generated, AI-generated, so we need to change the way we assess the result. So make it more interactive and replace like old school, text-based assessment. For example, like in computer science classes, I would not put much emphasis on the final exam, but I would put more emphasis on some interactive exercises that students have to deliver during the course, right? Because these are much harder to fake, right? And this way I shift basically the assessment process. But in legal terms, there's this open question: who should decide what AI-generated content is acceptable, right? So what is even acceptable? So all these things are very vaguely defined, right? And I think this discussion is open-ended because there are no clear criteria. And the same refers to the fine line between preventing misinformation and restricting free speech, right? So how can we adjust the threshold such that it is optimal and it complies with the society values, right? I mean, these values may also change due to, for example, a new political situation. Things that were okay yesterday may not be okay today or tomorrow, right? So, and I could continue this monologue, even further about the potential misuse of AI moderation for political or ideological purposes to manipulate large crowds of people.
That's correct. We could discuss about values and how they are preserved internationally for hours and how to balance them. But it's so sad that we don't have really clear technical methodology to combat misinformation. That's sad, but that's also a challenge for all the people who try to regulate it, to see it, and maybe to discuss it in the future. So what's your opinion about the future of AI safety regulations, and where are the main directions of development in this field? You said that we don't have any methods combating misinformation. So where should AI safety go?
Yeah, I guess I was trying to say that we do have methods, but they are not very reliable. So we cannot just solve the problem 100% automatically, but what we can do, we can highlight cases that require human attention. And in my opinion, this concept of human AI cooperation in future is going to play a very important role, also to close this gap in terms of legal regulations. So if you think, for example, of an airplane, mostly the flying is done by a machine, right? So I think 100% is the computer. However, we still have human pilots in the loop because of the legal responsibility, right? So, and also autonomous driving, which has already become reality in some parts of the world, right? So there are some kind of mechanisms, and I think in the area of, generative AI, human, as of now, must remain in the loop, basically to close the gap of responsibility. And the human should be responsible, and we need to teach humans how to use generative AI. Similar to Wikipedia. For example, 15 years ago, when I started my scientific career, the use of Wikipedia was not welcome because it was considered unreliable source of information, not editorially checked. But over years, we know that there is this phenomenon of the wisdom of crowds, that such sources of knowledge may have very high quality and even much higher quality because they will adapt very quickly to the new developments in the world, while conventional sources of information such as encyclopedias, right, need considerably more time. And the society has developed digital literacy training for children at school. So the use of Wikipedia is welcome now, but humans must understand the limitations of these technologies. So they should undergo specific training, and they need to apply their critical thinking skills, right? And this way they can make use of Wikipedia in a more or less controlled way. And I think the same should be applied to generative AI. We need to educate people about its limitations. We also need to disseminate knowledge how generative AI can be effectively used, which is kind of difficult because this field undergoes very fast development, right? So we need continuous education, which tools are safe to use, which tools are less safe to use, and which complementary measures should be taken to ensure their safe use. And of course, it's hard to put this all in regulations. In my opinion, it's like shooting at the moving target because this technology is not mature. So you can say we have accomplished the development, right? So in the field of AI safety, the body of research is quickly growing, right? So there's a large body of research identifying vulnerabilities of such models and also designing defenses. So similar to, operating system on your computer, in future you will have to install patches to the models. Once vulnerabilities are found, the researchers and the developers will provide a defense, right? And we need to get used to this continuous loop of attack and defense, and also learning how to use such tools effectively.
What I hear is to involve generative AI tools in education system as fast as possible to make people understand them, to make people also be able to criticize them and critically think about their outcomes. Is that correct? Because it's not so spread. Universities, especially legal law faculties, prohibit using AI systems, and then lawyers, law firms, in-house departments await that lawyers know these tools and understand them. If I understand you properly, I fully agree.
Yeah, so you understood me correctly. Just to summarize it in one claim, I think this game of not using generative AI is lost. So experts who do not embrace this technology will be too slow. They will not be able to adapt to the new requirements in the world. And I think there is no choice to use or not to use. So we all should use it, and we should embrace it, and we should get additional education and training to know the limitations and how to use it effectively without, sacrificing the quality and the human thinking.
Thank you, Iryna. This has been incredibly insightful conversation. Thank you for sharing your expertise. It's really important work you and your team are doing in the UKP Lab, so it's great you could share this knowledge and experience in our legal world. Thank you very much.
Great pleasure. Thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation.